Welcome to the It's Never Too Late show. I'm Monica Topetti, your guest host, and today we are turning the tables and interviewing Suzanne Oshima, life and love transformational coach with your next amazing story. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Monica. Thanks so much for turning the tables on me and being my guest host.
Yeah, I am really excited to dive into today's topic, which is your fear of rejection keeping you single? But before we dive in, could you share with our audience a little bit about who you serve and why?
Sure, I help single women transform midlife into their best life and find love again in their next chapter. And the reason why I do that, number one, I'm so passionate about it, but also because I just want women in midlife to realize that it's never too late. It's never too late to have what you want in life. And if that's finding love in your next chapter, you can have that too.
That's awesome. Well, Suzanne, let's dive into a topic that's a little emotional today. It's a little bit about, having your heart broken. And, we've all been there. I don't think anybody likes to have their heart broken, men or, women. And pretty much, I don't know. I don't know anybody on the planet that's not afraid of some kind of fear of rejection. But for some women, you were sharing with me that ultimately it's this fear of rejection that's completely paralyzing them from finding love again.
Yeah. And it's so true because, first of all, my heart goes out to everybody because there's not one person on this earth that doesn't want to be rejected. We all have that fear of rejection, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, if we don't put ourselves out there, right, is we're not going to find what we truly want. And I always try to compare it to things that we all know is it's the same that if you were going on job interview after job interview, right, and looking for that perfect job and you kept getting rejected and told you're not a good fit or we found somebody else, is would you give up on finding the right job or would you keep going and just look at each interview as a learning experience until you found the perfect job, right?
For sure. For sure. I love that idea of kind of using something that maybe you're familiar with or you're better at and projecting it onto the dating world, because you're right. For many of us, a job is a necessity. And so you kind of learn through trial and error what works and what doesn't work. Nothing goes perfectly until you land that, one job that's the right fit for you. So what kind of tips do you give to women who are just so afraid of personal rejection to kind of get out of that space, maybe step back and be a little bit more, objective, or kind of approach it from like a trial and error perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's not just about the trial and error. Because if you really have that strong fear of rejection, it's what I call working on that inner foundational piece. And what I always say is it begins from within. Right? And
Right.
what I mean by that, this is about building up your self confidence, your self esteem, and knowing your self worth. Because when you have that self confidence and who you are and what you have to offer a man, you're less likely to take rejection like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Because you'll know who you are and you'll be like, oh, well, he was the wrong man for me. And I always give my personal clients a test. And
Okay.
I want the women to take this test too. It's really simple.
Okay.
Is when it comes to dating and relationships and putting yourself out there and finding love again, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to rate yourself. And by the way, before you rate yourself, is this has nothing to do with your career, your job, or your business. is because I have found some women will rate themselves a 10 when it comes to their business or their job because they're so confident, but when it comes to finding love again and putting themselves out there, they may be a 5 or a 6 or a 6
Okay.
or a 7. So it's important to rate yourself honestly, number one. But then number two, the second part is rate yourself now on self-esteem and knowing your self-worth and what you have to offer a man. Where are you at? Again, put
Wow.
aside your job. And if you're not at a 9 or a 10 on both of those, then we need to do some work, or we get to do some work, because like I say, it begins from within. If you know who you are, what you have to offer, man, and you approach it confidently and you're at a 9 or a 10, when that man says, Monica, you're not the right woman for me, you'll go, oh, well, thanks for letting me know. And, and you'll move on.
Next. Yeah.
It's not to say that you're not going to get your heart broken, but you're not going to focus on what I say is becoming the self-critic of what's wrong with me? Oh my God, is it something I said, something I did? Because that's where women start to become the self-critic and think that something's wrong with them. Sometimes nothing is wrong with you. Sometimes we're just not the right fit for him and he's not the right fit for us.
Right. So, do you find that this fear of rejection in women in general and in your clients is something that stems from something like from childhood? Is it something that they've developed over time, maybe in a bad relationship? Or because, we're talking about how one woman can be so confident and not afraid of rejection or failure, say in her work environment, but when it comes to her personal environment, she's got these walls up.
Yeah, it can stem from something in their childhood, or it can stem from having a major heartbreak, whether it's in a divorce, right? Or in a long-term relationship where you had your heart totally broken. And then it's like, oh, that was so horrible that I don't want to go through that again. And I get that. I totally get that. We've all been there before, right?
For sure.
But it's important, if that's the reason why you have the fear of rejection, then it's important to go through the healing process. The healing process of not only healing your heart, but, re-examining what happened in the relationship. What part did you play? What parts were his own things, right? And so that you're able to heal that and then move forward and not bring that baggage from the marriage or the relationship into the next relationship. The worst thing someone can do after heartbreak and getting rejected is to just put yourself right back out there and ignoring what's underneath for you. Like your heart's broken, but you're still out there, is you're ignoring something that really needs to be dealt with. And trust me when I say is you may say, oh, I'm fine. And then you start dating someone and then he does something just like your ex and you start to feel like you're going down the path of getting rejected again. Trust me, it's going to trigger all of your old stuff and
Oh,
it's going to
wow.
all come out later
Wow.
on.
So what is it, do you think, really, like, if we're going to really unpack this, because I know it goes deeper than like rejection. It's what rejection means to us. So with women, do you find that it's the physical, pain of heartbreak? Is it the reminder that I'm just not good enough? What are women really deeply afraid of when we say a fear of rejection?
It's what you just said. It's the fear of I'm not enough. And so this is really interesting because, a lot of my audience is strong, independent women, successful women, right?
Mhm.
And they succeeded in business or in their jobs and climbing the corporate ladder, whatever it is, right? They've been successful in the professional part of their life. And
Right.
so, they got to a certain point in their job, and now, if they're succeeding there and then they're not succeeding in dating or relationships, that can feel like a real big blow to your ego, right? It's like,
Right.
why am I succeeding here, but I'm not succeeding here, right? And so it's a self-worth issue, but it's also taking it personally, like becoming, like I said, the self-critic of what's
Yes.
wrong with me. What is it? Something I said, something I did, when actually sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes it's him and his own issues because he's not emotionally available for a relationship.
So how do you have a woman kind of process that to be able to let go and be able to move on with her next relationship? I mean, it's hard to not take it personally when the product is you. It's like you could maybe do a presentation at work and, you muff it up, or, a report or something like that. And maybe your analytics wasn't, deep enough, and you can take that constructive criticism. But when you feel like you're putting yourself out there and you're trying to be true and authentic, and then somebody is quote unquote rejecting you, how do you divorce yourself from that when it really is so personal?
Well, it's I like how you use the word divorce yourself from that. But you can't really, right? We're human, right? And we're gonna go through some stuff in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all had disappointments in life and things that we really wanted that didn't work out the way we wanted it to. And so sometimes you're just going to have to go through that, the rejection, the hurt, the healing, because not everyone is for everyone. But what I always find sometimes is, I'll tell you, a big place where women feel the rejection is when a man disappears, like in the early stages of dating. Like, she's like, was it something I said? Was it something
Right.
I did? And it always breaks my heart because, like I said, sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes it's his own stuff. But what I always tell women to do when a man disappears is, if they really want an exercise, is to take a sheet of paper, right? And
Okay.
divide it down the middle and write down on the right side all the good things about him and then all the bad things about him. And usually, if she's being really honest with herself, she probably saw a lot of more bad than she cares to admit, or some red or yellow flags that she chose to ignore. And so sometimes when he rejects us, it's actually a blessing in disguise, because maybe where we were trying to make something work that really wasn't workable, because he actually had a lot of the red flags, but we were ignoring those because we had so much chemistry and attraction. And I say
Right.
this all the time, is sometimes chemistry and attraction, as good as it feels and how we all want it sometimes, is it can blind us to who is the right man for us and who is the wrong man for us. And sometimes we ignore those red flags and we miss them because we want it to work out with someone who's not really there or ready for a relationship.
I love that idea. I think, especially for women that are very successful in their careers, we want to win. And so, even if the guy is no prize, like, we want to win. Like, we don't want to be the one rejected. We want to reject. And so, because we're very much, in that mode of being successful, it feels like a loss. It feels like a dent to our ego. And so what you're saying is really step back and take a look at that relationship and see, was it really a loss? Just because it didn't work out, or he quote unquote rejected you, was that a loss? Maybe it was a success because you dodged a bullet, right?
Yeah, and I love that you said that, because it's true. Sometimes I feel like the universe gives us what we really need because we weren't willing to say goodbye to him, even though we knew he was the bad like, you know how women sometimes say he's the bad boy, right?
Bad. Yes, yes, yes.
And while he's exciting and there's so much chemistry and attraction, sometimes we don't have the strength to say goodbye because we know he's not a good fit. So sometimes the universe makes him disappear, makes him pull away, makes him reject you because sometimes we need that to happen, right? But like
Right.
you said, it's really funny that you said that. We as successful women want to win, and no one wants to be rejected, right? But, it brings up another point. It just popped into my head is how sometimes when we feel the rejection could be coming, is I've also seen women reject him then before he can reject her.
Oh my gosh.
And all you're doing is, it's a game, right? It's a game of I'll reject him before he rejects me. And I don't recommend that, by the way, because
Yeah.
all you're doing is putting up walls around you and your heart to protect you, right? And sometimes we need to go through that, right? And it builds
Yeah.
us up. It makes us stronger.
Yes.
And it makes us also realize what we want and what we don't want in a man. So sometimes, like I said, you have to go through stuff to discover new things and what you truly want in the right man.
Yeah, I love that idea of, building up resilience through the experience of rejection because, we can say, oh, we're strong women, but really strength to me anyway is a measure of how you react when things are really tough, when the chips are down and how you're able to bounce back. And if we're not building up our resiliency muscle, then it's not going to be very strong. And what's the way to build that up is to go through experiences like being rejected, even if it wasn't the right relationship, and learning to bounce back from that. And then you also brought up a really great point is the gift of self-reflection and looking on the relationship and not only, what were the man's contribution to the relationship and maybe what were some of the warning signals or negatives that you were ignoring, but how were you in that relationship? And what if there were some things that maybe you could improve upon in your next relationship? Because none of us are perfect. We're all works in progress. And unless you have a quote unquote failed relationship, you're really not going to be doing that kind of self-reflection.
Yeah, it's very true. And a lot of times that I've seen is where a woman can get rejected, right? And then she's like, "Oh, see, I'm not putting myself out there." And again, that breaks my heart because the walls just came back up. The walls around your heart came back up. And I try to live my life so that I take risks and that I do things that scare me all the time because I never want to look back on my life and say, what if? I never want to go, oh, what if blah, blah, blah happened? Oh, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. I want to look back on my life and say, gosh, while that was really tough to go through, I'm so glad I did. I'm glad I took that risk because I learned so much. I was able to experience so much. And here's what I know, Monica, is that if we don't open up our hearts and take the walls down, the very thing that you're trying to keep out, which is rejection, is you're also keeping out love from coming into your heart.
Yes. Yes, I have actually a girlfriend who she dated in her 30s and she got really hurt and she did not process the rejection well. And she's kind of given up on dating. She's in midlife, and not to say that you have to have a man to complete you. She's great with kids. I always thought she'd be a great mom. She chose to not, do that route herself. And she's got friends in her life and family in her life, but she has so much to give to a man. And it was because of that rejection and pain and not being willing to kind of work through that, that she wrote off that part of her life. And, whether you've been in a long-term relationship or marriage that hurt you, whether you were just, fell in love with somebody who you thought was the love of your life and got major heartbreak, you really need to do the work if you want to be able to have that gift of another relationship and love. And for some women, it's just so paralyzing. Are there any other tips? I know it probably, like you said, takes a lot of self-work and building up kind of that infrastructure. But are there any first steps that you could give to somebody who's just right now, like, so paralyzed to move forward?
Yeah, thank you for sharing your friend's story. That breaks my heart because what's happened for her is she's stuck in that pain. And while she may think that, no, I'm fine. I don't want to date. I'm fine being on my own. Does she say, like,
Yep.
I'm fine being alone. I don't need a man, which is true. Like you said, we as women don't need a man to complete us. But if you're doing it for the right reasons versus I don't want it, the underlying current is I don't want to get my heart broken again, right? And so what's happened is she's stuck in that old trauma, right? And she hasn't processed it. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if it happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I've seen with some of my personal one-on-one clients where they got their heart broken 20, 30 years ago, and they still haven't been able to move on. And, they tell themselves a story. I'm fine being alone. I'm fine. I don't need a man. And like I said, again, you don't. But if that's not what you truly want, and you truly do want the long-term relationship and someone to share your life with, it's important. It's never too late to do that deep inner work. And it's not easy. This is what I will say. It is not easy to face your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But when we do the deep inner work, and we go through all of that pain, and it's going to open up a lot of old wounds, right, that are going to start to bleed again, is as painful as it is, you will come out on the other side if you're willing to go through it, so much better, so much bigger, and you'll start to transform your life. Like, I always look at it like, how caterpillars are, and how they go into a cocoon and then they transform into a butterfly, something even more beautiful. And if we're willing to go through that transformation process, we may come out on the other side with an amazing life. But sometimes we get stuck in that pain and we don't realize we're stuck in that pain.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I love about this show, beyond just all of the topics that we cover, is the name. It's Never Too Late. And I think that that's so important when we're talking about looking for love, because a lot of us are in midlife defined by our previous relationships and our previous heartbreaks and experiences in love. And we just think, oh, it's too late. I'm never going to change, or that's not for me. And that's really what you help unpack with women. It doesn't matter if you're in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s or 70s or beyond. And it doesn't really matter what you've been through. It is never too late to be able to open up your heart again and find love. And so I'm just so grateful and appreciative for all of your expertise and insight, especially for the women listening today that are really trying to take that first step and overcome rejection.
Yeah. And this is what I would say to women is it's never too late unless you think it's too late. If you think it's too late, then it's too late. If you think it's not too late, then it's not too late.
Right.
I choose to believe that it's never too late. And that's how I live my life. Right. And I don't know about you, Monica, but I want to live my life in my 50s and beyond as the butterfly, not the caterpillar, the butterfly. And there's a reason why there's a butterfly in my logo.
I love that.
So it's all about transformation. And is the work easy? No, but you can create something pretty amazing if you're willing to do the work.
I love that, Suzanne. Wow. Thank you so much. That was such great insight. And I hope everybody listening out there that was able to help you if you're, starting to get back out there and you have a fear of rejection, that you know that there's help available. And especially for women out there that maybe want to start taking a little bit deeper dive, Suzanne has a free masterclass that she offers online, The Secrets for Finding a Quality Man. And Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit more about that class and how women can register?
Sure. So, the secrets to meeting a quality man free masterclass. I teach you the number one way to meet a quality man. I share with you that secret, but also I share with you if you're doing online dating and it's not working for you, it's not the site. I'm going to share with you how to turn that around and how to get it to start working for you. So if you want to register for that, if you're watching the video, you can click right here on the video or below the video to register for that. If you're listening to the podcast, you can go to yournextamazingstory.com and click at the top of the homepage.
Thanks, Suzanne. And thanks, everyone, for watching the It's Never Too Late show, available in podcast and videocast format. If you want to re-listen to this episode, this was a good one, or you want to catch up on past episodes, just visit us at yournextamazingstory.com. Until then, bye for now.